In linguistics, conjugation, KNDUEN, is the creation of derived forms of a verb from its principal parts by inflection. Conjugation may be affected by person, number, gender, tense, aspect, mood, voice, or other grammatical categories. Typically, the principal parts are the root and/or several modifications of it. All the different forms of the same verb constitute a lexeme, and the canonical form of the verb that is conventionally used to represent that lexeme is called dilemma. The term conjugation is applied only to the inflection of verbs, and not of other parts of speech. Also, it is often restricted to denoting the formation of finite forms of a verb. These may be referred to as conjugated forms, as opposed to non-finite forms, such as the infinitive or gerund, which tend not to be marked for most of the grammatical categories. Conjugation is also the traditional name for a group of verbs that share a similar conjugation pattern in a particular language. For example, Latin is said to have 4 conjugations of verbs. This means that any regular Latin verb can be conjugated in any person, number, tense, mood, and voice by knowing which of the 4 conjugation groups it belongs to, and its principal parts. A verb that does not follow all of the standard conjugation patterns of the language is said to be an irregular verb. The system of all conjugated variants of a particular verb or class of verbs is called a verb paradigm. This may be presented in the form of a conjugation table. Examples: Indo-European languages usually inflect verbs for several grammatical categories in complex paradigms, although some, like English, have simplified verb conjugation to a large extent. Below is the conjugation of the verb to be in the present tense, in English, German, Yiddish, Dutch, Afrikaans, Icelandic, Faroese, Swedish, Norwegian, Latvian, Bulgarian, Bosnian, Serbian, Croatian, Polish, Slovenian, Macedonian, Hindi, Persian, Latin, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, Albanian, Armenian, Irish, Ukrainian, Ancient Attic Greek and Modern Greek. This is usually the most irregular verb. The similarities in corresponding verb forms may be noticed. Some of the conjugations may be disused, like the English thou form, or have additional meanings, like the English you form, which can also stand for second person singular or be impersonal. 1 archaic, poetical, used only with the pronoun thou. 2 in Flemish dialects. 3 in the Bokmal written standard. 4 in the Ninor Scripten standard. Vera and Veer are both alternate forms. 5 Attic. 6 Ini is only used as a noun. 7 PTC. Keen. 8 in the Toscan GEG dialects, respectively. 9 Existential has another meaning. Usage of is considered to be rural. Now, see Indo-European copular verbal agreement. Verbal agreement or concord is a morphosyntactic construct in which properties of the subject and/or objects of a verb are indicated by the verb form. Verbs are then said to agree with their subjects. Many English verbs exhibit subject agreement of the following sort. Whereas I go, you go, we go, they go are all grammatical in standard English, she go is not. Instead, a special form of the verb to go has to be used to produce she goes. On the other hand, I goes, you goes, etc. are not grammatical in standard English. A few English verbs have no special forms that indicate subject agreement, and the verb to be has an additional form am that can only be used with the pronoun I as the subject. Verbs in written French exhibit more intensive agreement morphology than English verbs. Je suis, tu es, elle est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont. Historically, English used to have a similar verbal paradigm. Some historic verb forms are used by Shakespeare as slightly archaic or more formal variants of the modern forms. Some languages with verbal agreement can leave certain subjects implicit when the subject is fully determined by the verb form. In Spanish, for instance, subject pronouns do not need to be explicitly present, even though in French, its close relative, they are obligatory. The Spanish equivalent to the French je suis can be simply soy. The pronoun yo in the explicit form yo soy is only required for emphasis or to clear ambiguity in complex texts. Some languages have a richer agreement system in which verbs also agree with some or all of their objects. Arabic exhibits verbal agreement for the subject, direct object, indirect object, benefaction and ablative objects. Basque can show agreement not only for subject, direct object and indirect object, but it also on occasion exhibits agreement for the listener as the implicit benefactor. Autorekeri digut means, they brought us the car, but autorekeri zigutun means, they brought us the car. Languages with a rich agreement morphology facilitate relatively free word order without leading to increased ambiguity. The canonical word order in Basque is subject, object, verb. However, all permutations of subject, verb and object are permitted. Nonverbal person agreement in some languages. Predicative adjectives and copular complements receive a form of person agreement that is distinct from that used on ordinary predicative verbs, although this is a form of conjugation in that it refers back to the person of the subject. It is not verbal, because it always derives from pronouns that have become cliticized to the nouns to which they refer. An example of nonverbal person agreement, along with contrasting verbal conjugation, can be found from Behar. 1, 2, y, you are big. Harder, b, wa, you are a sheikh. E.N. for, he flees. Another example can be found from Ket. Themba, die, I am a tungus. Die.fen, I am standing. In Turkic, and a few Uralic and Australian Aboriginal languages, predicative adjectives and copular complements take affixes that are identical to those used on predicative verbs, but their negation is different. For example, in Turkish, kos.you.your.son, you are running. Kavis.son, you are a sergeant. Under negation this becomes kos.mu.your.son, you are not running. Kavis.eagle.sin, you are not a sergeant. For this reason, the person agreement affixes used with predicative adjectives and nominals in Turkic languages are considered to be non-verbal in character. In some analyses, they are viewed as a form of verbal takeover by a copular strategy. Factors that affect conjugation. Common grammatical categories according to which verbs can be conjugated are the following. Finite verb forms. Grammatical person, grammatical number, grammatical gender, grammatical tense, grammatical aspect, grammatical mood, grammatical voice. Non-finite verb forms. Other factors which may affect conjugation are degree of formality, inclusiveness and exclusiveness in the first person plural, transitivity, valency,